Okay. All right. So my name is Monica Moran. I'm a outdoor recreation planner for the Bureau of Land Management. I work in Central Oregon. Um, and my specialty is wild and scenic rivers. And the reason why I came here is because I wanted to be involved with the River Management Society. Most of my career I spent in the field as a river ranger, backcountry ranger for the Park Service, the Forest Service, or the Bureau of Land Management. And I wanted to take all of that knowledge in the field and help manage the land that gave me such an incredible life living out in the field. So at this point in my career, I'm learning. So I'm trying to absorb as much information as possible. And at one point, I did live in Alaska, and I lived in Valdez, and I saw what a salmon run was supposed to be like. There were so many fish that you could catch them with your hands. And if you walked across the stream, you might be able to step on one. And when I moved over to Oregon, I was in the Columbia River Basin off one of the tributaries, and I noticed that there just wasn't that level of fish. And, you wonder why. And I think that this dam removal could be precedent setting and bring back the fish, which is the lifeblood of so many communities. And it can be the lifeblood here again. So I just want to see history in the making, and that's why I'm here.
Cool. That is great. Well, however, just get where you're comfortable. Don't stand like that. That's not comfortable. I'm standing like that because I want to get my eye line like this with you.
Okay.
So, however, you're like, hey, you're telling a story.
Okay.
Okay. So let me get you all centered there. But you're doing great. Now, here's something that I've been thinking, and just you saying it, you've articulated it with your experience in Valdez with salmon. Picture like the future, maybe even go back in history and how like incredible this river system was to salmon, and picture maybe 20, 30 years down the road when, the salmon fishery here is, who knows, maybe it'd take 5 years, but I don't know. But you tell me, like, picture what it could be. And like I said yesterday about like thinking outside of the liberal box, like tie that into like feeding families, not just tribes, because like I said, the people that sometimes we need to convince that this is a good idea, it's not you and me. We already know.
Mm-hmm.
So, anyways.
Well, like I said, my experience in Valdez really changed my outlook on everything. And there were so many fish. It smelled like rotting fish a whole month of the year because there were so many. And the bears would come in and they would only eat the skin off the fish because it was that plentiful. And what the salmon could do is it could bring jobs, it could bring industry, and it could, I don't know. What's that?
It will.
It will. It will. Yeah. And it could bring fishing. People.
Just start over, but say instead of could.
Yeah.
People don't want to hear could.
Yeah.
It will.
It will.
It absolutely will.
Well, let me think of some other points too, because I feel like I'm kind of running that one out. So, the fishing will bring in tourism. The fishing. You're cutting me, right? I hope.
No, I just want to move the camera because you moved. Now you're good. Go.
Okay. So the fishing will bring in fish. The fishing will bring in tourism. The fishing will bring in jobs because you can be guiding fishing trips and things like that. You could be harvesting fish. And people all over could come here to see what a healthy salmon run could look like. And again, that could be precedent setting across the US, across the world. And I think also one of the bigger issues with the dams, from my understanding, was the algae blooms. And having a toxic watershed, tourists don't want to come and swim in a toxic river. The locals don't want their children swimming in a toxic river. It could be bad for their health. Maybe they might want to move away and go somewhere else that is less toxic. So people might be moving away from their area and seeking elsewhere. So I think that taking these dams out will change things for the better in ways that we don't quite understand yet.
Okay. One thing I'd like to add to that is, like you say, toxic rivers, and obviously messing with my exposure here. Like I said, I'm always trying to think outside of our liberal box. They don't give a fuck about a toxic river. They don't go. They go to a lake, which is also even more toxic. It kills people. People get blue-green algae poisoning swimming in lakes. So, say what you just said, maybe in a different way or the same, doesn't matter. But tie into the toxicity of lakes versus the toxicity of rivers, and how, you know, damless river will eventually clean itself up, and people will have, you know, they'll have healthy places to recreate instead of unhealthy. Yeah. Anyways.
Okay. Okay. So when the dams come out and the river starts flowing naturally again, we're not going to see the algae blooms. And so we'll have areas to go to where people want to recreate, where they want to go swimming, where they want to go fishing. And I think that is, again, precedent setting.
Yeah, so I actually downloaded a bunch of videos, and they're about Klamath removal, dam removal, before I came here. In fact, I got it on my phone. And for me, and it really hit home visually, was the algal blooms. Like, they happen on the lakes, and then the toxic stuff kind of works its way down the system. But when it comes in into the head of the lake, that's where you see the plumes start to happen, and you visually could see them from the airplane. They're pointing them out as they're talking about it, and you know, that the lake is what creates the opportunity for, all of a sudden you have all this still water and all that algae that's kind of in there getting tumbled around. All of a sudden it's like boom, and that's where it proliferates. And if without that, the lakes, that would just be washed out. But anyways, you don't have to talk about that. That was just something I noticed. But so tell me about have you ever killed anyone?
No.
How about almost killed someone? No, I'm just kidding. Tell me about where are you from originally? Where'd you grow up?
I grew up in Maine, and then I left at 18, and I bounced around for a while between the Rockies and the Pacific Northwest before going up to Alaska. So I've kind of lived all over. And now my home is Central Oregon, and I plan to stay.
Where?
In Prineville. So it's outside of Bend, about 45 minutes.
Okay.
It's a small rural town.
And you said you worked for the Park Service. Tell me about that. Like, start with, I used to work for the Park Service, and where and what you did.
So I started my career as an intern with the National Park Service at Mount Rainier. I was a backcountry ranger, and we did data collection in the field, checking permits, a lot of search and rescue, making sure people were okay, and if they weren't, trying to help them get out alive. So I spent about 4 seasons at Rainier, and then I moved over to North Cascades National Park. Same job, same idea, except we also staffed the front desk. So anyone who had questions about the trip that they want to go on, we'd help them out with that. And then I moved up to Denali in Alaska, and it was the same job, but we were more trip advisors. I mean, we kind of help people plan trips. And then I also worked for the Forest Service out in Idaho, Wyoming, and then I worked for the Bureau of Land Management in Montana, and now I work for Bureau of Land Management in Oregon.
Did you ever fly with Talkeet in an air taxi?
No, I flew out in Wrangell, St. Elias. That was pretty amazing.
I did a job out there. Like, if you were Denali, you fly this way and you hit the Revelations, which are on the western side of the whole Alaska range, and then on the back side we landed in the middle of nowhere, and I worked on this TV show in the dead of winter. Lived in one of those, what do they call them, an Arctic oven with, wood stove inside the tent.
Nice.
It was pretty cool experience, but man, it was, woo! It was, one morning it was minus 48.
That's cold.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyways.
Freeze your eyeballs.
Right. So, why don't you talk about, the importance of wilderness? Most people don't know because they don't get out, but it's kind of like it's good to, remember where we came from, and look there, the sun's coming out, and I think it helps. You do a little twist and just see what you can on her, throw some light. Just there you go, and just about how important it is, for children and just regular people to get out and enjoy nature, a healthy ecosystem, and the value of it, but pretend you're trying to convince your sister who never goes out and her kid who's on video games. I'm just making something up, but I'm sure somebody who could use a good lesson on the importance of wilderness.
Yeah, you bet. So I personally value wilderness and wild and scenic rivers incredibly. So as we continue to grow in population and size and expand, there are just these pockets of wilderness and wild and scenic river throughout the United States where we can go back to and see remember what it looked like way back in the day. But I mean, during the pandemic, we kept a lot of things open and left those wilderness areas mostly open so you can go and walk and heal. And I mean, it's a great way to relieve stress. I mean, it's really important. I mean, yeah, I mean, you can cut all of that. Okay. I need a little bit more time to think of these answers before we record.
My example would be, do you have any friends that, that don't really, like maybe you went to school with and they went and had kids, or, got just a regular job and they never get out, they have kids, and it's like, man, your kid would, or have you ever been in an experience where you saw a kid like who really had done camp or been out, and then all of a sudden they're like on a river and they're like, finding hellgrammites and just like, oh wow, and I mean, I've done that, seen that a million times, and it really, I think, expands, people's minds. People don't have to spend their whole life out in nature like we have and do in order to enjoy it. You can still be, someone who like takes time off from, doing the city things that we tend to do, and like go, like spend a day or a weekend with your kid, like exploring and learning about a new thing,
Okay, I can tell. I have an example now.
Okay.
So when I was up in Denali, we worked with youth. So we would take youth from the city, from Anchorage, who have never gotten out in the woods before, and we would take them on a backpack trip. And so the first day started out in a little yurt. So we all camped in this yurt, and we cooked food and whatnot. And then the next day we had a camp that had a bathroom, and it was by the road. And then the next day we hiked out into the wilderness. And it was hard for them. It was hard, even though it was beautiful and sunny and it was a perfect day. They were out of their comfort zone. But then a couple days later, the weather turned. It got cold, it got rainy, and the kids, they came together and they met the challenge. They knew how important it was for their survival and for everybody's health and well-being to kind of hunker down and take care of each other. And then after, when we came out, we went back to the camp that was by the road and had a toilet, and everyone's like, oh my gosh, we have a toilet. I have a place where I can put my garbage. And then we went back to the yurt, and they're like, we have running water, there's a shower, there's warm food. And so it was really neat to see the transition. And I think going out there, having that experience, and the fact that they all bonded together, worked together for the safety of the crew, of the team. And they were able to come back out and appreciate the amenities that we have. And some of us, we all take for granted on a daily basis. And we inspired them to go out and do this in the future and maybe take their children out and have a challenge, have a group activity, meet that challenge, and then appreciate what we have when you come back out.
Okay, and then just to, if you can, try to add to that, how did they come together? What did they do that made their, the teamwork make them like come together, and how did like to make them survive and thrive, etc.?
Yeah, so the first couple of days when it was nice and beautiful, we would hike up on the tundra and look out at Denali. But the kids still had sort of a hard time just being out there because, their feet hurt or they were a little bit cold or whatever. Everyone had something that they were working through. And when things got tough, when it was 40 degrees and raining and the kids were wet and they saw that their instructors were actually concerned about their well-being and their instructors were shivering because they're trying to take care of the children, the same kids that were having those maybe more negative attitudes, they turned it to positive, and they started talking about how an amazing trip it was, even though it actually got hard. And it was more of an attitude shift, so a change in perspective. They came together because they knew that they had to keep everyone's attitude positive so that nobody actually got hurt or had hypothermia or did something that could damage themselves or the people around them.
Cool. So what was it like? They were like, oh, we should go all collect wood so we can dry our stuff, or it's like, oh, hey, Bobby's socks are wet, we should like get him in a tent, or was it like that? Was there?
So get the kids in a tent, get them in warm, dry clothes, keep them dry. I mean, the goal was to keep the kids dry, which is actually not as easy as it sounds.
Cool. And let me grab my phone. I just wanted to take a couple notes real quick.
You've had an amazing life.
Oh, I've been lucky. Yeah.
All of us out here have been lucky.
Yeah, it's been great. I wouldn't take it back for the world. I mean, I was seasonal for 17 seasons before I got my permanent job, and I get to travel the U.S. It's
So nice.
pretty cool. Yeah, and now I get to manage, so it's a really neat opportunity.
So you're with BLM now?
I am, yep. I spent most of my career with Park Service, but now those BLM years are probably adding up faster than, time's just starting to go like this.
Yeah, the older we get, the faster it goes.
Yeah. It's going fast.
Yeah,
I've been here almost 4 years now,
Brineville?
or 4 years. Well, I was in Maupin for a little bit.
I don't know where that is.
It's on the Deschutes. So I was the Deschutes lead river ranger, and then I got a planning job.
So the river rangers on the Deschutes, what's their focus?
Well, they clean a lot of toilets.
Just
a lot of toilets.
For clarification, this is some